These are my grandbabies, Rio and Kiylan. This is Taeler that's still fighting for her life. Don't even know that her babies are gone. Don't even know that they've already been buried.
No parent should ever have to bury a child, but Genxr Gallaher buried two, both babies, both gone in an instant, and just months later he stood over another grave, this time their mother's. This is the story of Taeler Joy Bennett and her two sons, Rio and Kiylan, and of the father, Genxr Gallaher, who was left to bury his children while praying their mother would wake from a coma she never survived. Today we dig into the crime, the cover-up, the community's outrage, and the justice still waiting to be served. You'll hear the facts, you'll feel the heartbreak, and maybe, just maybe, you'll join the fight for a justice system that doesn't let monsters walk free. Because they're not just names, they're a family, and they deserve to be heard. February 10th, 2025, Sarasota, Florida. It was just after 8:30 p.m. when 28-year-old Taeler Bennett was crossing the street near US 301. Her 2-year-old son, Rio, was nestled in his stroller. Her 5-month-old baby, Kiylan, was strapped safely to her chest. A peaceful night, a simple walk home. But then came the Lexus, fast and silent, a 72-year-old woman behind the wheel, the car barreling through the crosswalk at full speed, without slowing. Rio never had a chance. The force of the impact shattered the stroller. Taeler's legs buckled as the car hit her. Baby Kiylan, still in the carrier, was torn from her body in the chaos. The driver never stopped, no screech of brakes, no pause to look back, just a cold continuation as if nothing happened, as if 3 lives weren't just shattered in the street behind her. Her weapon, a white Lexus E300, disappeared into the dark Sarasota streets. But others didn't run. Innocent bystanders, strangers rushed in, horrified. One woman knelt beside Rio's crumpled stroller, screaming for someone to call 911. A man took off his jacket and covered baby Kiylan. Someone else tried desperately to stop the bleeding from Taeler's head as she lay unconscious, her body mangled by the impact. None of them were prepared for what they saw, yet in the face of horror they acted. While the woman behind the wheel vanished into the night, it was these strangers who held the line between life and death, who knelt on the pavement, who screamed, who prayed, who stayed. Amid the screams and distant sirens, the driver quietly navigated Sarasota's streets all the way home. She pulled into her driveway like it was any other night. No sirens following, no questions asked, no conscience slowing her down. The woman parked the damaged Lexus in her garage. The windshield and front end of the car were a haunting sight. Shattered and mangled with streaks of blood pooled in places where innocent lives clashed with metal and glass. But that wasn't the worst of it. There was little Rio's stroller, the frame lodged beneath the car, twisted and torn. Most would fall to their knees at the sight of it, overcome with horror and guilt. But not her. She calmly turned off the Lexus, took the keys out of the ignition, and stepped out, only to open the door of another vehicle, start it up, and casually back out of her driveway. This vehicle was clean, untouched, and untraceable. The perfect cover to return to the scene, not to help or to confess, but to watch. As she crept past the intersection, the street was no longer quiet. It was chaos, with first responders and bystanders rushing about, doing anything possible to save the lives of the mother and her 2 babies the woman left for dead. What was left of Rio's stroller, torn clothing, and broken car parts reflected in the red and blue lights of emergency vehicles. Bystanders stood in stunned silence, some crying, some praying, some just staring, unable to process what they had just witnessed. One man had taken off his shirt to press against Taylor's bleeding head. Another woman cradled baby Kiylan's tiny hand, whispering, "Stay with us," through her tears. And through it all, the woman continued driving, not fast, not panicked, just passing, as if she were a stranger, as if she hadn't just shattered a family. She didn't stop to help. She didn't ask if the children were alive. She didn't even slow down. She just disappeared again into the night, into silence, into the kind of darkness that doesn't come from the sky, but from within. When the sirens finally reached the scene, it was already too late for the children. 2-year-old Rio was pronounced dead at the scene, still strapped into what was left of his stroller, still wearing his tiny shoes. 5-month-old Kiylan was rushed to the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Their father, Genxr, arrived to what could only be described as every parent's worst nightmare. No warning, no time, just the words no parent should ever hear. They're gone. Taeler was still breathing, barely. She was rushed to Sarasota Memorial Hospital in critical condition, her skull fractured, her brain swelling. Doctors placed her in a medically induced coma. For weeks, her family waited, prayed, hoped for any movement, a squeeze of the hand, a miracle. As Genxr tried to process the horrendous tragedy that turned his family upside down, he had no time to fall apart. 2 little girls still needed their dad. They were too young to understand the finality of death and the looming possibility of losing their mother. He prayed Taeler would wake up, that maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have to watch his daughters lose their mother too, that they wouldn't have to grow up asking why the world took everything. Genxr wasn't just grieving, he was surviving, for them, for her, for the pieces of his family that still remained. On February 22nd, 2025, just 12 days after the crash, Genxr Gallaher stood before 2 tiny caskets, one for Rio, one for Kiylan, 2 sons laid to rest before they ever had a chance to grow up. He buried his babies while their mother, his partner, his love, lay in a coma. Unconscious, unaware, still fighting for her life in a hospital bed just miles away. He had to plan a funeral while praying for a miracle. He had to pick out burial clothes while wondering if he'd soon be picking out a third. No father should ever have to carry a casket that small, let alone 2. And through it all, he had to stay strong for his daughters, for the family, for the pieces of his heart that hadn't been ripped away. As the investigation began, detectives descended upon the crash site. It was eerily silent, littered with haunting remnants of the tragedy. Torn clothing, broken glass, and blood littered the street. Hardened law enforcement agents found themselves struggling to hold back the emotion creeping up in their throats, finding it hard to speak, knowing the horror of what happened that night. They slowly and methodically began piecing together a trail, one shard at a time. From the wreckage, they recovered fragments of a headlight, tiny slivers of truth buried in the asphalt. They took those shards to the local Lexus dealerships, matching the glass to a specific model, a white Lexus ES 300. Then came the grind, door to door, garage to garage. Dozens of vehicles were inspected until they found it. The Lexus was parked face first in a Sarasota garage, its front end mangled, its windshield shattered, its undercarriage still bearing the twisted remains of a child's stroller. The woman who owned it was 72-year-old June Fenton, a retired hospice worker, a neighbor, a ghost hiding in plain sight. On March 3rd, 21 days after the crash, June Fenton was arrested, charged with 2 counts of leaving the scene of a crash resulting in death, and 1 count for serious injury. In court, her attorney claimed she thought she hit a dog, that she turned around, saw people standing in the road, and drove away because she didn't want to see an animal suffer. But this wasn't a dog. This was a mother and her 2 babies. And June didn't just flee. She watched, then vanished again.
72-year-old June Fenton faces charges in a deadly hit and run in Sarasota. The crash killed 2 children and left their mother in a coma. Fenton was arrested last night and appeared before a judge today. 10 Tampa Bay's Adoria Chumba joins us now live from outside of the Sarasota County Jail, and that is where Fenton is being held tonight. Adore.
That's right. Tonight, Taeler Joy Bennett's family and her 2 children's family members also telling us that they are relieved to hear about the arrest. And they say they will now wait patiently for justice for their loved one.
They just moved from my house probably about 6 months ago. They lived with me. But I never met Kiylan, but I did, talk to him on FaceTime and get him to laugh.
A laughter Candace McCormick says she'll never see again. Her newest great-grandchild, 5-month-old Kiylan, was killed along with his 2.5-year-old big brother, Rio Gallaher. Tonight, their mother, Taeler Joy, remains hospitalized.
She's still in a coma.
Good.
She looks really good, but it's just time, for her to heal.
The crash happened last month on US 301 near 7th Street. Police identified 72-year-old June Fenton days later, but she wasn't arrested and charged until Monday night. That's after investigators say they were able to confirm Fenton was driving the white Lexus that hit the family.
Took off and left the scene. It was an accident at first, but now she killed my 2 grandsons, so it's a lot different.
In court today, the focus was on Fenton's actions following the crash.
She's driving a vehicle that has a windshield that can barely be seen through and makes it all the way home to the meadows. She then parks her car face first into the garage where all of the damage to the vehicle is, and then gets a different car.
By the time of her arrest, 2 children were dead. A mother was clinging to life, and the woman responsible, June Fenton, was only charged with leaving the scene of a crash resulting in death. Not manslaughter, not vehicular homicide, not second-degree murder. Just 3 counts of fleeing the scene. She didn't leave the scene. She left 2 babies to die in the street. She left a mother bleeding in the road. She left a family shattered and returned to what could only be seen as to relish in the wake of the disaster she not only caused, but so callously drove away from, showing no remorse after the fact. The family and the community were outraged and demanded answers. How could a woman who ran over a family, switched cars, and drove back to the scene be treated like she made a simple mistake instead of committing a crime? Jessica Gallaher, the children's grandmother, said it best. She's sleeping in her own bed, eating what she wants, while my grandchildren are in the ground. And then came the final blow. On March 4th, just 1 day after her arrest, June posted bail. $650,000, paid through a mortgage agreement with a local bail bond company. Her bail restrictions are listed as the following. No driving. June is prohibited from operating any motor vehicle. GPS monitoring. She must wear a GPS ankle monitor at all times to track her movements. Court supervision. She remains under the jurisdiction of the court and must comply with all pre-trial conditions. No contact with the victim's family. Though not explicitly stated in all reports, this is a common restriction in cases involving fatalities and ongoing investigations. Despite these conditions, the fact that she was able to return home while Donzel buried his sons and sat beside Taylor's hospital bed left the family and community not only devastated, but furious. Many feel the restrictions are a slap on the wrist compared to the lives lost. This wasn't justice, this was a loophole, a system that let a woman walk away from the graveyard she created and walk right back into her own life. The family and the community were left with so many questions. Was June impaired in any way? Did she plow through a mother and her children with malice? How could this have happened? According to the Sarasota Police Department and court records, Taylor had the right of way and was clearly visible at the time of the crash. Prosecutors emphasized that the family had just entered the crosswalk when they were hit, and that the impact was so severe it shattered the Lexus's windshield and embedded part of Rio's stroller beneath the car. Toxicology reports showed no signs of drugs or alcohol in June's system. She wasn't impaired. She wasn't distracted by a cell phone. She just didn't stop. The crash was entirely preventable. June's failure to yield, failure to stop, and her decision to flee the scene are what turned a moment of negligence into a tragedy, and a community's heartbreak into outrage.
They're giving this woman too much freedom. I don't care how much money anybody has or anything.
Jessica Gallaher says she's speaking up for her grandchildren who can no longer speak for themselves.
On the day they found June Fenton, she should have been arrested for not only leaving them, my grandchildren, and my daughter-in-law there to die. She left them there not once, but she left them there twice.
It wasn't a dark alley. It wasn't a blind curve. A mother pushing a stroller, her baby strapped to her chest, clearly visible. There was no fog, no rain, no obstruction, just a straight road and a family crossing it. So how could June not see them? How could she hit a stroller so hard it embedded into her car while the weight of Taylor's body shattered her windshield and then claim she hit a dog? That is ludicrous. To many in the community, this wasn't a mistake, it was a choice, and true justice must be served, not just a slap on the wrist. Donzel Gallaher didn't say it out loud, but others did. She saw them. She knew. She did it on purpose. June's next court date was originally set for April of 2025, but it has since been postponed until August according to recent court filings. Rumors have swirled around the internet accusing June of having ties to law enforcement or the judiciary, stating that this is how she was able to walk free on bail without manslaughter or second-degree murder charges. It's also been stated that she is wealthy and is being treated differently than someone of lesser means who may find themselves in her position. As of now, there's no public evidence confirming that June Fenton has personal ties to law enforcement or the prosecutor's office. She is a 72-year-old retired hospice worker who lived in the Meadows, a relatively affluent Sarasota neighborhood. Her home was valued at about $327,900 last year, and she was able to post $650,000 bail through a mortgage agreement with a local bail bond company, which suggests she has access to some financial resources, but not necessarily extreme wealth. The lack of charges like vehicular homicide or manslaughter has sparked outrage. Many in the community and the family feel the charges don't reflect the severity or cruelty of her actions. The hit, the flight, the car switch, the return to the scene, and the failure to help. On April 11th, 2025, after 2 long, silent months in a coma, Taeler Joy Bennett died. Her sister Hope shared the news with the world. She's gone. She never woke up. She never got to say goodbye to her children, never got the chance to fight for justice herself. On April 20th, 2025, the Gallaher family gathered once again, but this time it wasn't just to bury 2 baby boys. It was to say goodbye to their mother. Taeler Joy Bennett, just 29 years old, was a mother, a partner, a sister, a daughter. She fought for 2 months in a coma, but on April 11th, just before sunrise, her body gave out, and she joined her 2 baby boys in death, leaving behind her 2 daughters, a devastated family and community. At her funeral, Genxr Gallaher stood before a room of mourners and tried to find words for the unthinkable. He spoke of her laughter, of the way she danced in the kitchen, of how she made their house feel like a home. And he said this: "I lost my whole world, my sons, my best friend. My girls don't have their mommy anymore, and I don't know how to breathe without her." Taeler Joy Bennett was laid to rest at Palms Memorial Park in Sarasota, Florida, the same place where her sons Rio and Kiylan were buried just weeks earlier. The family visits often. Genxr brings the girls Auburn and Ronnie, who still ask when mommy's coming home. They bring flowers, they bring toys, they bring the kind of love that doesn't end at a headstone. After Taeler's death, prosecutors upgraded the charges against June Fenton. She now faces 3 counts of leaving the scene of a crash resulting in death, 1 for each life she took. With the upgraded charges, June faces 90 years in prison if convicted on all the charges. As serious as that may seem, she is still walking free. And every day her court date is postponed is another day she has to live her life as she chooses, unlike Taeler and her boys. Genxr said it best: "She gets to go home. I go home to silence, to empty beds, to a future that doesn't make sense anymore." In the weeks after Taeler's death, the community began to rise. Vigils turned into protests, grief turned into fury, and silence turned into a rallying cry: justice for Taeler, justice for Rio, and justice for Kiylan. They gathered outside the Sarasota courthouse and they lit candles. They held signs, they demanded answers. Genxr stood with them, not as a symbol, but as a father, a man who buried his sons, a man who watched the love of his life slip away, a man who now carries the weight of justice on his shoulders, and so many questions as to how a 72-year-old woman who used to care for the dying could be so callous and calculated. June didn't panic. She planned. She didn't confess. She concealed. And to this day, she has shown no public remorse. Experts say some people possess a chilling ability to detach, to rationalize, to compartmentalize, to erase empathy when it's inconvenient. It's not always evil, but it is dangerous, because when remorse disappears, so does accountability. This isn't just about one crash. It's about a system that too often protects the privileged and punishes the grieving. It's about making sure no one else has to bury their babies and beg for justice in the same breath. Prosecutors now have the power to pursue vehicular homicide, manslaughter, or even depraved indifference if they choose to. They need pressure, they need voices, and they need us. Taeler can't speak for herself. Rio can't tell you how much he loved dinosaurs. Kiylan will never say his first word. So we will speak for them. We will write, march, show up in courtrooms. We must flood the prosecutor's office with letters, calls, and petitions. We will remind them this isn't just a case, it's a family. It's a future stolen. It's a mother and her babies who deserve more than silence. Justice doesn't happen on its own. It's built by voices, by outrage, by love that refuses to be buried. If you've watched this far and your heart is burning, don't let it fade. Call or write the Sarasota State Attorney's Office. Respectfully urge them to pursue upgraded charges that reflect the cruelty of this crime. Remind them that the world is watching. Every voice matters. Every letter counts. Their phone number and address are on the screen for your convenience. You can pause the video and screenshot the information. If you're in or around the Sarasota, Florida area, attend the next court hearing in August. Show up. Stand with the family. Let the court see that Taeler, Rio, and Kiylan are not forgotten. Support the family. Offer your voice and prayers. Follow Donzel's journey and carry his story to others. Spread the word. Share this video. Raise the noise so the system can't ignore it. Justice sleeps when good people stay silent. Don't let this end in whispers. Let it end in justice. For Taeler, for her babies, for every family that never gets a second chance.